We have Dan Richardson, we have Robertson Connolly, we have Heidi Mumford-Yeo, I've got to remember everyone's names here, and Daryna Milgevska, and I'm Anneka Svenska. Now, Foundation was set up 2 years ago in order to, let's put it this way, there's lots of charities I feel are in competition with one another, and we wanted an organization that would be there non-biased to help everybody, regardless of who you are, what you do and where you are. And all of us are very privileged to give our efforts and our attempts right across the board to help charities and rescue organizations all over the world, no matter what. So it's sort of not a conceited organization. We want to have other people's better interests at heart. It's been going about 2 years, and I think the main emphasis is to build up a network of ambassadors all over the world that can be spokespeople for animal causes, environmental issues, and veganism, and just basically spread the word of compassion across the world and influence other people to make everything a better place. Now, our talk today is how you can use your position to become a positive role model for veganism. Now, each of us have our own profession and our own job, and so do all of you in the audience today. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be a cook, you could sell things, you could be a fitness instructor, but it doesn't matter what you do in life. You can always do something to give back and make the world a better place. And this is what everybody here on the panel have done, basically. And I'd just like to introduce you to each of them one at a time, who are just going to say a little bit about what they do, basically. So first of all, I'll quickly introduce myself. I am Anneka Svenska. I'm a wildlife presenter, and I've worked on TV for many years just doing general presenting and general animal wildlife shows. But because of my love of animals, I have sort of shaped my career recently in order to make wildlife programs that will change the world, hopefully in some capacity, whether it might be enlightening people about what's happening in the world, all the problems in the world, because we just don't get to see that on the David Attenborough programs. We're sort of, all of that stuff is hidden from us. So hopefully through my films, that I've now made about 200 or 300 short films, that we can actually get some truth out there and educate people. And that is what I've used. I've used my job and my position in order to do that. And we have Dan Richardson here, who's just going to say a little bit about what he does.
Oh, hello, I'm Dan. I'm an actor from rubbish films and good TV, and mainly. And animal conservation, animal welfare has always been a huge thing for me, and so I use as much of my spare time, which I have quite a lot of, as just giving as much as I can to, for example, the Born Free Foundation, Angels for the Innocent, and various other organizations that I work for. So that, for me, is across the species. It's not a specific focus on, for example, the Romanian dogs or the African wildlife. It's anything, because I think that compassion isn't and shouldn't be species specific. It's across the board, and that includes humans too. So as Anneka says, it's just doing what I can to give back and make the world a better place, because I genuinely feel we have a responsibility to do that, especially if you've got any kind of a platform.
Okay, we've got, I'm sorry, it's not in sat order, I'm afraid. It's the PowerPoint presentation order. So the next speaker we've got is Heidi.
Hi everyone, my name's Heidi. I'm an actress and an author. I became vegan just over 2 years ago. I became vegan for the animals, ostensibly, but I really quickly realized that being vegan was contemporaneous with feeling my best on a really intrinsic level, so physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I became really passionate about sharing that with people and showing people that transitioning to a vegan lifestyle is a lot easier than perhaps one would think. I believe that everything fundamentally begins with education. So in that vein, I wrote a series of children's books which are oriented to early years awareness and understanding around animal rights and our natural world and the environment. The idea being if we shape young hearts and minds today, it will create a better future for tomorrow. So I also have a vegan blog, My Beautiful Vegan World, where I share loads of recipes. I'm a very passionate cook, and just basically just trying to share my journey and what I find along the way.
Okay, and our next speaker we have is Annie Robertson Connolly.
Hi. I started really with my animal journey. I became vegetarian 12 years ago after I'd finished my athletic career. I used to run for England and Great Britain, cross country and 1500 metres. I didn't really pay too much attention to my diet, particularly from a vegetarian point whilst I was competing, but it definitely came afterwards. Then I became vegan around about 9 months ago, and I realised that with my athletic background, I moved on to being a personal trainer, and I work within, obviously, the fitness industry. And I realised that actually I was in a really good place to be able to encourage people to take on a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle, because people do think that it does inhibit you and that it does limit your abilities physically. And so with my passion being animals and animal welfare, I realised I am in a very integral position to be able to get it out there that you absolutely do not need to take on any form of animal products whatsoever, anything from an animal, and you can train incredibly hard and live a very fulfilled life without harming animals. And so I've used my rather loud voice as effectively as possible to try and get that message across, because I do think that I'm in quite a good position to do that, because I do train quite hard. That's it.
Okay, and we have got Daryna Milgevska, who's a gorgeous vegan model.
Hi, my name is Daryna Milgevska, and I've been modeling in the past when I was in Ukraine, and then I came to UK and I stopped eating meat without any reason or any explanation even for myself. And since then, this passion grew only stronger in me, and I was always looking for the ways of using anything that I can that's in my resources to help animals. And around 3 years ago, I contacted PETA, and I started modeling for them, and we did a lot of great stuff. And I think I'm still on my journey of finding the best way that I'm comfortable with and that will make the most difference to the world. But at the moment, it's mainly modeling, which is not easy to keep ethical, but when it is, it's amazing.
All right, thank you. And finally, unfortunately, we don't have Carla Fraser here, who's another fantastic team member. But I did want to actually include her in this because she has done so much in 1 year. She is a trained actress and a teacher, but she basically stood up one day and decided to make a groundbreaking film on a shoestring budget, and it's called Grey Future, and it's about what the future would be like when we lose our elephants and our rhinos. And it's a very short film. It's only about 5 minutes long, but it's gone to all the festivals, and it's really thought-provoking, and it just goes to show that anyone can get up and do something that's pretty profound. And I've just got to say, I think she's a fantastic spokesperson for compassion, and she's sorry she can't be here today, and we do miss her because she's such a valuable team member. But what we're going to do today is basically just have a little chat about being an ambassador, being a spokesperson. So I'm just going to go through a few questions, after which I'm going to open to the audience if anybody would like to ask any questions to our team members. So the first thing I just want to ask is, Can you remember the point in your life when you decided that you really wanted to use your skills to help animals and to bring compassion into people's lives? Can you remember that time, and what were you feeling at the time? What was the trigger? Daryna?
I think I remember mine clearly. I wanted to work in a dog shelter, and every time I would call, they would be busy, and always I was thinking that I'm not strong enough because it takes strength to handle that much cruelty that you see and not being able to take the dogs home. So it was bright morning, and I decided just to go to my local dog shelter, and I did. And I came there saying, "Hey, I'm a free labor, please use me." And there was this lady who said, "Oh no," like she was very rude. She said that there is a very, very long monthly waiting list, and if I'm lucky, I'll get there. So anyway, I was very, very upset. I came home, and that's when I emailed Peter saying that trying to find other places where I could use myself, but that was the day.
Okay. Heidi?
I think looking after animals has always been an instinctive path for me. I grew up around animals. I rescued my own horse when I was a child. And I think as I grew older, and especially with the mass dissemination of social media, where information has become so democratized now, it's so accessible, the rise of animal cruelty and abuse, I was left feeling actually really angry and powerless, and I wanted to find a way to take back some of that power and really feel that I was able to make a fundamental change. So my partner and I started a crowdfunding campaign to build an app, the first UK app to combat animal cruelty and abuse, and we got funded and we got the app built and we launched the app. So that was a seminal moment, and from there I just try and stay as active as I can across a range of issues and campaigns around activism.
Annie?
I remember the time very clearly as well. I'm from Yorkshire, and so I've grown up in very around farmlands and around farming, the farming community. And I also have a horse, and where one of my horses was kept, I used to have to ride past where they kept some of the farm animals. And I will not go into detail, but I saw regularly firsthand what would happen to these animals that the farmers supposedly loved, cherished, cared for. And I saw regularly what would happen to them, and I'm afraid those animals were not loved, cherished, and cared for. And I remembered riding one particular day, and I looked into one of the pens on the left-hand side, and there were an array of animals in there, and because he used to do very bizarre sales, and there was a little pony and there was a sheep, and both of them looked at me, and I remember looking at them, and our eyes actually locked on, and I just on my horse just rode past, and it was almost like they were trying to ask me to do something. And I remembered there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do to help those two animals. And I remember I couldn't stop thinking about them. They absolutely have no voice at all. There is nothing. They can't do anything. They do not have or own their own lives. And I remembered thinking that day, we've done this to them, but we have to help them. We have to get them out as well. We are the only people that can help them. And if I rode on past and ignored that encounter, I'm almost as bad as the farmer, and that was the start. Doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter. We all have to try, and we all have to do our bit. And that was for that sheep and for that pony, and that was definitely for me the time that I realised I have to do something.
Dan?
I'd echo what Heidi said, really. For me, it felt like an instinctive part of who I am at my core for as long as I can remember. And I suppose I have to credit my parents with that. And I do have very, very early childhood memories of my dad. They always find the right doorway, don't they? An injured pigeon would crawl into his doorway. And so one of my earliest memories is him putting this pigeon in our backyard with a saucer of milk with bread in it, which of course it would have been vegan milk in my choice, but it's when you grow up around that, I guess it's inbuilt in you. So, and when you just talked about using whatever skills you have in whatever walk of life you come from, one of the first things I remember doing, anything I ever did as a sponsored activity, it was always an animal charity that was the beneficiary. And it's not exactly a skill, but I used to have really long hair, and I worked in the corporate world before I became an actor. So, and actually, this goes back to using my position now is totally different from then, because I was just a guy in a sales position in a business. But I had long hair, and when the MD said I had to get my hair cut, I raised about 300 quid for the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society getting my hair cut. So it was just always in me, and I can't go back to a specific catalytic incident with a specific animal, but it was just always there.
All right, for me, I think when I actually first decided that I would help animals in general was about the age of 8, and I was walking down my high street, and I came across one of those stands with all the leaflets on them. And I picked the leaflets up, and I saw exactly what was happening to animals all over the world. And my mum had not told me any of this, and I was shell-shocked, I was horrified. And it just sort of came down on me like a ton of bricks. And from that moment onwards, I didn't eat meat. So that was a significant part of my life which changed. But the point I remember actually changing to use my skills for animals, I think happened a little bit later on in my career. I'd been presenting vacuous television programs, I think we could say. And I just didn't feel fulfilled. I thought, what the hell am I doing on this planet if all I'm doing is making vacuous rubbish for people just to watch? Is doing nothing. So that's when I turned around and decided I would use my skills to help animals. I would use what I have. I could still carry on and make TV, but I would just make sure it's something that was actually making a difference for once. So that happened probably in the middle of my 20s after doing a few really crappy dramas on TV and also presenting a few things. So I think, everyone can do it. I don't want to spend too long on going through all the questions because we might run out of time. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to pose some questions, and if any of you want to just answer up. Do you think that all animal activists should be vegan? If so, why? Who would like to answer that? Heidi, what's the price?
That's a really good question, Anneka, and speaking completely honestly, I think, yes, you do. And there are two reasons why I think that. I think ostensibly, if you're not vegan, you open yourself up to a lot of criticism and a lot of accusations of double standards, which, there are arguments for and against. But I also think, and this is the really seminal point, if you truly, truly love all animals, that's not just our companion animals, it's not just the cetaceans, it's not just the animals that we have a particular affinity to, it's all animals, then you want to protect all animals. And I think the only really way you can enact that in real terms is to follow a vegan lifestyle.
Anybody else would like to add to that? Annie?
I'm not going to disagree, but I think any voice is a good voice. I think that even if you are attempting to become vegan and you are still out there doing something proactive, whether it's relating to fair trade, anything at all, I welcome that. And I think that if you're not able to, we are all able to be vegan, there's no reason why we can't, but if you're not, for whatever reason, I encourage anybody to try and be a voice for all animals. And I personally would like to think that if somebody wasn't vegan, if they could do something, still do it, because something's better than nothing at all. So fundamentally, I agree entirely, but I am all for as many people as we possibly can fighting for animals, being the voice for animals. Then what you do to some degree, it's not irrelevant, but for me it doesn't matter. Let's all try stand together.
I personally think that it is hypocritical if you help animals. However, on the plus side, if you do help an animal and you put your heart and soul into it, it can help make that change because it gives you the connection. So whether it might be somebody that rescues a dog because they love dogs, it helps them open their heart and it gives them a connection to animals in general and compassion, which then can lead on to something greater, which will then lead on to something greater. And then eventually, possibly, they could become a vegan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it should be encouraged, and they potentially will. If you're not vegan, you potentially will face a little bit of negativity. But still, for me, I think you're absolutely right. What could that person lead on to achieve, to become? What difference could that person make? So I'm all for do whatever we can to encourage everybody.
Does anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, and it's so controversial. And I think what it comes down to is the difference between the ideal world scenario, which we all want, we all agree on. It would be awesome, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We'd love everyone to be vegan right now, and I said this in the previous session. It would be wonderful if everyone went vegan right now and stopped wearing leather and everything just happened, but it isn't reality, and therefore it's a case of having to separate the ideal scenario with the reality that we're faced with. And I think that's where I agree with what everyone's saying, because if you have someone who puts their whole life and soul into, I don't know, stopping the Yulin Dog Festival, but they, literally speaking, are a hypocrite. There's no arguing it. They are a hypocrite if they're eating meat. I said it in the previous one. You can't be conserving one species while you're eating another, but people do. And therefore, I guess it comes down to the question, should we ignore that person's pleas for help for that animal because they eat something that's not vegan? It's a really, really tough situation, but I have to say, I think they need our voice. And whoever's voice, I'm with you, Annie, in the sense that whoever's voice is given to animals, I think we've got to listen to them.
We'll move on to the next question. So
you've got a question over there, actually, if you want.
What's that? Sorry?
You've got a question right there.
No, I just. Is it all right if we have questions at the end? Because what we're going to do is open up all the questions to the audience at the end. Yeah, is it all right if we, because I'm going to let the audience ask as many questions as you want at the end, and I'll welcome as many, and then we'll be able to hand the microphone out, which will be great as well. Okay, how hard or how easy has it been to take your skills that you have in your job, in your work that you do every day, and reinvent them in such a way that they could be valuable to ethical causes? Daryna, do you want to help answer this?
I think for me personally, I had a lot of issues with my personal lifestyle because I used to be a big shopaholic and I love makeup, and most of those things are tested and were made of leather. But the exact moment when you value your personal, maybe selfish interest against someone's actual life, you might be not there to see that life being killed or seeing the rabbits being tested on, and you might be completely disconnected. But as soon as you realize that that's the choice you're making, I think it's not hard at all, because I don't want to be a part of something that's causing other creatures any pain. And I think with other people who have maybe different lifestyles to mine, I don't think that it's that hard, because these days we have so many options in every single thing you might ever want, might ever need, so it should be pretty easy.
But you are a model, and you're a really good one. And I think what would be really important to tell the audience, because I'm sure they're really interested in this, is, of course, you could go and you could model anything. You could do anything you want. You could appear in a catalogue. You could wear fur. You could wear makeup that's tested on animals. But you have chosen what you use your modelling for. So you go out and, you're out at all the demonstrations in London. Now, Daryna here fronts the campaigns at some of the top charities in London, and she'll go out and she'll be standing outside London Fashion Week, and she'll be protesting. And yes, she's looking gorgeous. So she's using that skill and she's using that gift, but she's using it in a way that is enlightening people and is making change. She's flown out to Pamplona in Spain and has stood out there trying to stop the running of the bulls. And also recently you've been modeling vegan clothing, haven't you, in vegan magazines. So is that hard to do? Do you find that you've had to give up a lot of work for that and sacrifice paychecks, let's put it that way?
I definitely feel like I could have been more successful in the modeling world if I wasn't vegan, in terms that I would have more jobs, I'd maybe be more seen, but it's not as fulfilling. Those few things that I do once in a while, the feelings that they give me inside, the reward is way, way better than any paychecks or other things that would come with unethical modeling.
Annie, I think it'd be quite interesting to ask you, because of course you're a fitness instructor as well on the side, aren't you? Do you encourage people through your skills to take on vegan lifestyle when they're actually training with you? Is this something you try to do?
I love it. It's obviously in my industry, protein, and I get that all the time. How can you train if you're vegan? And quite frankly, it's pretty easy. I train very hard, and people who obviously who are around me, they see that, and that brings up the question: how do you not feel tired? Does it not take you ages to recover? And immediately that opens the conversation, and I can then discuss with them how I eat, which immediately deals with the protein issue. And men, and particularly guys who like to build muscle, particularly, they're a little bit more challenging than the majority of them. But a lot of them are still pretty happy to engage in a conversation, and they do, hopefully by the end of it, they do understand that there are lots of other ways other than chicken. And in fact, I only had that conversation last night with somebody who's actually training for the Marathon des Sables, which is an absolutely incredible event. And he's vegetarian, and was talking to me because he was attempting to go vegan. So I'm helping him with the transition. And as far as I'm concerned, if somebody like him, who does such extreme events, we've now got some of the top athletes in the world now are going vegan, not just because of animal ethical reasons, because of it's better for their body. We can use them as well as examples. So for me, I'm in a perfect place where it's quite old school, the old school thought where it's chicken, and we still get guys coming into the gyms with chicken that they have to consume within 20 minutes after their workout. So I happen to think I'm in a really good position to be able to discuss this point, and I can say that things are changing, and it's certainly a positive step.
Well, I think you've got your work cut out for you, because I know lots of macho men in the gym, and they still think if they don't eat their meat, they're wussy or something. But I think times are changing, and places like VegFest are a really good place to find out. Now, I'd like to just ask that question collectively, actually, to Heidi and Dan, because you're both actors, and in a way, it's a hard thing to do, isn't it, to bring veganism and stuff into acting, because you're just given a job. However, it has triggered projects that you're thinking of, especially with Carla, the other member that's not here today, about possibly creating maybe some dramatic productions that could be geared using your acting skills towards people. So aside from your job, you could still be using your acting skills to do something extra on the side.
Yeah, I guess, Anneka, for me, anyway, on the commercial side, I left my modeler agency and joined the first exclusive vegan model agency, international model agency. So now I will only model and represent 100% vegan brands, whether it's thank you. And whether it's skincare, whether it's cosmetics, whether it's handbags, it's relatively new for me. But having come from a decade of modeling regular designers, I've definitely noticed that it has, obviously cut down on potential jobs. And I guess it's the same with acting as well, in a commercial sense. I just recently signed with another theatrical agent, and I had to have that very direct, transparent conversation where I said, please do not put me up for brands that either, endorse animal testing or dairy products or meat products. I just won't be able to do those jobs. So yeah, getting around to answering your question, it's definitely cut down on my pool of work in terms of revenue. But I think it's absolutely necessary, and with that you get a greater focus, a greater sense of purpose, and then you can plow that into dramatic enterprises, whether it's films, features, shorts, and get really creative with that. But you definitely need to make your mark, draw a line in the sand. This is what I'm prepared to do. This is not, what I'm not prepared to do.
Yeah, I often think that, the actors in Game of Thrones, when they're given those great big wolf skins and coyote skins to hang around their necks, how they must think, because the actor, isn't he, what's his name, who is a vegan, that plays what's his name,
I've never seen an episode.
The little guy. He's wonderful. He's a vegan. Yeah. But they all have to wear this fur. But Dan, I know that you in particular, you're thinking of possibly in the future making your own dramatizations, aren't you? So using your skills in a way that will benefit.
Yeah, I think that we're very privileged being in the film business, because what greater tool is there to change people's awareness and mindset? And a great example, which is actually the example that I'm looking to build my own screenplay on, is Blood Diamond. If anyone's seen Blood Diamond, the movie, I mean, it helps that it's got DiCaprio in it, of course, because people go see whatever he's in. But the fact is, people don't go to be preached at. People don't like to be told that they've been doing something wrong. But if you put a backdrop of a real issue like the diamond trade on an incredibly well-presented, fantastic film with Oscar-winning performances of human relationships and human drama unfolding, people come out of the cinema educated, whether they realise or not. And that's what I really think is important. And we're in a very luxurious position to be able to do that, especially if we can pull favours from people in the business who, because of the nature of this movement, there's people who are willing to give their time and effort for very little or even free, because they advocate the same cause as us.
I had an incident going back a few weeks ago where I had someone email me, and he wanted me, because I work with wolves, wolf behaviour and wolf dog behaviour, wanted me to go on a film set and advise about these wolves. And when I read the script, it was about wolves killing people again. And I was going to be paid a whole load of money, and they were going to ship me over to France, and I was going to give them advice on what would look realistic. What would wolves do realistically in the wild? And I told my agent, absolutely not. So it does definitely cut down the pool of work that you do. And I agree with you. Sometimes the radical approach can scare people off. And I've put out radical stuff, and my audience is very small. However, if I make beautiful wildlife TV and I capture people, I just sneak that message in, and people don't even notice they're getting it, because they're getting entertained at the same time, but they don't know I've just slipped in a few facts here and there. But I do think, yes, if you can hit people very cleverly, no matter what skill you've got, you can do it. Yeah, as Dan was saying, we're all very privileged to work in media, but it's not just about us being in the media, it's about everybody's skills. Okay, I just want to talk about some of the projects you guys have done this year, because anyone can do something pretty spectacular. And, you know, we look at someone like Richard Branson, for example. He's not a vegan, but he didn't do very well at school. He was dyslexic. He was failing a lot of things. But he got up there and he was a businessman, and he did something pretty amazing with his whole life. And I've always been this advocate for never say no pretty much everything and just get up there and do everything. And this year, you know, we've had Annie here and Dan did something pretty impressive, which I've got to say blew my socks off when they actually told me that they were going to do it. I actually couldn't believe it. I got this message from Dan, call me now, I'm going to do something amazing. So Dan, can you please tell everybody what you and Annie did, which actually did happen, which I'm surprised about?
Apologies to anyone who was in the previous session, because I said this then, but we decided to do something for the rescue dogs in Romania, and we wanted to find something that would captivate people. So rather than just do the standard, 10K run, no disrespect to that, because there's a place for it, but we wanted to capture people's imaginations and try to raise a larger amount of money than normal. So we went and kayaked the English Channel and then rode our bikes from Brighton, where we arrived on the kayaks, to London. I was actually happy to just do the kayaking, and Annie, being the ex-competitive athlete, and I can tell you from personal experience, you don't lose that mindset even if you stop competing. Like I said, kayaking 21 miles. She said people swim the channel, so we can't just kayak the channel. We have to do something else, like ride our bikes to London. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, so absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to move on because I can see we're running out of time. One of the questions that I did definitely want to cover today is veganism definitely has had a stereotype in the past, and in my mind that gives non-vegans an excuse to think we're all weird and strange, and distance themselves from us. It's another excuse for why they don't have to become a vegan, because let's just pop the vegans in this weird pot over here and screw the lid on, and we're in the acceptable mainstream branch. How important do you think it is to get veganism into the mainstream, and how can we do it? Who would like to answer that? Because we need to get away from this stereotype, don't we?
I think vegans is getting into the mainstream, and pretty fast these days, which is very, very pleasant to see. So it's up to us to speed it up, of course, like supporting brands that are actually ethically, sharing with friends and family, using your skills, whatever skills it is, in order to promote veganism. But also, you mentioned about the stereotypes, and there is still lots of stereotypes that we eat on salads and we're all super weak and lacking of nutrition. But what is very, very important for us vegans to remember, because I remember I did this mistake in the past, when someone would come and ask about protein, I'll be like, oh God, protein again, don't you know? And I get a bit, not angry, but like, how can you not know? And that was very, very silly of me, because I was pushing people away. So now I have to constantly remind myself to be patient, even if the question sounds super silly, even if someone is making a rude joke, or if they're stereotyping you in the worst possible way. Really, it's so important and crucial to stay patient and to explain to them, because every joke, every comment is an opportunity for you to educate people. They might cut it out and say oh no, not interested, stop lecturing me, but they still will get the information. So it is important to be patient.
Yeah. Anybody else like to say other ways that we can make veganism more mainstream? I mean, one example I'll quickly say, just before you talk there, Dan, is League Against Cruel Sports. They go to all their meetings in suits, like business people, and they speak like mainstream business people. They don't try to be anarchic and sort of vandalize things. And the way they present themselves, I think, is very, very good at engaging with people. What other thoughts do you have?
Well, that's a great point. And the Born Free Foundation I'm very proud to be a patron for them, because of the fact that they present themselves in that very respectable manner, and it achieves more. Because ultimately, people can do whatever they want, but the only question it really comes down to is what achieves more for the cause. And if you, as you say, if you're impatient or if you're anarchic and whatever it is that you're doing that's pushing people away instead of embracing it, then it's a mistake. But I would also say that in terms of coming to the mainstream, I'd agree with Daryna, it's absolutely coming to the mainstream now. And one of the things that's really helping with that, and I think we can help push and promote in a simple way, is anything like Cowspiracy or What the Health. There's some amazing documentaries, and there's an incredible appetite for those documentaries these days. They do such a good job of compelling argument to the viewer. We don't have to even bother. They just sit and watch their movie while they're having their dinner, and probably the last meat dinner they'll be eating if it is a meat dinner. And it's an incredible way. And you've got people like DiCaprio exec producing those two examples that I just gave, and he's also now just bought into Beyond Meat, a meat-free company. You know, we've got people like that with his 20 million Instagram followers pitching the vegan lifestyle. It's happening. I just think we all have to facilitate it the best we can, gently and patiently, like you said.
Just the health, actually. My husband's one of these sort of crazy carnivores that you think you absolutely can't change. But I've even noticed that since he watched What's the Health, he's starting to buy packets of, I mean, it's better than, it's not as good as vegan, but he's getting corn and stuff like that now. So I can definitely think his mind's ticking. So sometimes I think some people aren't compassionate to animals, but you can get them in other ways, whether it's health, whether they think they're going to kill themselves from a disease. There's other ways that you can go. Two more questions before we just go to some audience questions from the audience. I just wanted to talk about negativity in the vegan industry. I know it's a question that we wanted to bring up about how important it is for vegans to support other vegans in the industry. How do you deal with really radical veganism, and how is the best way? He's handing the microphone over. How's the best? Heidi, why don't you answer this? How's the best way to
it's a really good question, actually, and I don't know if I know what the best way is. The best way for me, I guess, would be just to know what you're about, know why you're in it, and look. Just because we're all vegans in a group, in a room, and it doesn't mean we're all going to get along or we're all necessarily going to like each other. Just because we share that, that label, if you like. So I just think ultimately any kind of negativity it runs counter to the message we're trying to give, and it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about our egos, or how many times you watch this documentary, or how many, protests you went to this year. It's about the animals. It's about doing everything in your power that's realistically possible. And listen, people are going to judge you no matter what you're going to do. So you've just got to do the best that you can do. And I think at the end of the day, it might sound simplistic, but if you don't kind of follow that ethos, you're just going to beat yourself up by exposing yourself to it's all unnecessary. So yeah, I guess that's my take on it.
And finally, obviously the essence of today's talk is about how everyone out there can use their own skills in life to help animals in any way. I mean, what advice have you got for anyone out there, no matter what job they do, no matter what path in life? How easy is it, in your opinion, to just change something in what you're doing to make a difference in the world? Anyone?
I think it's pretty easy. I think if you are thinking, for me, it's all about conscious living. We have to be conscious to the decisions we make every single day, because they have a huge impact somewhere else, and that generally tends to be with animals. And so for me, I think that even if on one day you manage to make, so yes, I'm vegan and I encourage veganism, but for me, even if somebody was to say have one vegan day a week, I think that's fantastic. And I think we absolutely should encourage anything, whatever it may be, the fact that you are even considering that, it's there, that compassionate, that way of thinking is there. Let's encourage that. Let's see what we can do with that. So for me, I think that it's something we absolutely must encourage as much as possible.
Right, we're running out of time, and I know that we've got the next speaker coming. So is there anybody who would like to ask our panel any questions before the end? Yes, I'll give you the microphone, and then they can hear you.
I already forgot my question, but I wanted to say thank you, because you're saying about mainstream. How do we make mainstream to be trendy? And it's people like you, beautiful, healthy, with big voices on Instagrams that people can actually follow. So that's really helpful. And when you see other actors that are sort of halfway there, I know it's hard not to be militant, because I am. I just fell out with my neighbor the other day because she asked me to go buy cheese, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But you know, sometimes we can't control ourselves because we are vegan and it's murder. But if there's an actor that is kind of loves dogs, but he's kind of saying he's vegetarian, yes, support, educate. Even if they ask you to go for that wolf thing, take the money, because we need to make money as vegans, but also go and educate them about wolves.
You can't do that if the whole script is anti-animals. Do you know what I mean? That would be going against ethics, and it would also make other people like hunters go out and demonize the wolves and kill them. I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to wrap, because I know we've got the next speaker here, but thank you so much for coming along. If you'd like to find out more about what we do, you can go to our website, which is www.angelsfortheinnocent.org. We've also got a Facebook page. You can take a look at everything we do. We support third-party charities most of the time. As I said, that Dan is patron to Born Free. We all help Romanian rescue charities, rescue dog charities, all of the word, farm animals, you name it, we do it. We've also, as I said, Facebook page, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on everything.